everyone. Welcome to the Career Boost show of the Medical Portfolio Podcast. I'm your host, Ricardo Ladeiras Lopes. As we know, in this podcast, we delve into the remarkable journeys of extraordinary people in medicine. Today, our honored guest is Dr. Michael Gibson. Well, I could spend half an hour trying to summarize Dr. Gibson's career, but I'll do it briefly. Dr. Gibson is an interventional cardiologist, a cardiovascular researcher and educator, an innovator, and an artist. He's professor of medicine at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center at Harvard and has been ranked as one of the world's most highly cited authors in all of science, with an H index of 143 and being cited over 160,000 times. At the forefront of contemporary cardiology, numerous advancements owe their existence to the pioneering efforts of Dr. Gibson. He's the most influential cardiologist on X, Twitter, and he's also the creator of a stunning collection of paintings available for admiration, at least on X. Dr. Gibson, thank you for joining us. It's really an honor to conduct this interview, and I'm certain our listeners are eagerly anticipating your insights.
Well, thanks for having me today.
Okay, I'll start by asking you to provide our listeners with a brief 1-minute overview of your career.
Well, my most important career, first and foremost, is being a parent. I have 3 kids. I'm very proud of all of them. They're all different, and I love them all in different ways. I guess the other thing I am is a doctor. I think that's first and foremost. No one cares how much you know unless they know how much you care. And I try and care very deeply about my patients. Secondly, I do research. I love leading large collaborative international efforts in, say, 50 countries at a few thousand sites. It's breathtaking. It's exciting. I also am an educator. I created a website called WikiDoc, like Wikipedia for doctors, and WikiPatient for patients, where we've had literally a couple of thousand doctors volunteer over the years to create copyleft content, meaning you can take it and do whatever you want with it. It's not copyright. And finally, as you said, I'm an artist, practicing artist, love art. I like using both sides of my brain.
Reflecting on your journey, who played a pivotal role as your mentor?
Well, the first patient I saw came into the emergency room with, as a medical student, with hypotension, tachycardia, had been out partying all night before. She was 19 years old. We shocked her to get her back into sinus rhythm and did an echo, and she had what we called back then IHSS, or now called HOOCM, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. And the resident, back in those days, we stayed in the hospital all night. The resident handed me this blue book, and on the cover of the blue book, it said heart disease. And the person who wrote it was Braunwald. And I read that chapter on IHSS and realized this person, he really kind of discovered it and did all the kind of initial research on all of its mechanisms. And I kind of fell in love with the pathophysiology. I was going to be an orthopedic surgeon. I played college football, but then I did orthopedic surgery. And I decided I wanted to go into medicine. And the team at the University of Chicago said, well, where would you like to do your internship and residency? I said, I'm going to go work with that Braunwald guy. And they all kind of laughed. And they said, well, you know, he is the chairman of medicine at 2 Harvard hospitals. I said, yeah, that's what I mean. I want to work with him. So next thing you knew, I was on a plane, interviewed. And next thing you knew, I was at the Brigham. And next thing you knew, I was working with Dr. Braunwald and have since about 1987. He's a friend, but a mentor as well. And I've learned so many of my life lessons partnering with him over those past 37 years. It's been a real hero of mine.
Could you share some of the significant hurdles you encountered and the strategies employed to tackle them?
So, hurdles, every day is a hurdle. I mean, it's not like I'm running and I jump over a hurdle. Every day I'm climbing, it just seems. I think somehow people think a career is, something like this. That's not the way a career is. A career, it goes forwards, it goes backwards, it goes sideways, hopefully it goes forward. The other thing I find is a lot of people think, I did something really, really good today. Something good's going to happen. And recently I was asked that question at the Sky meeting. I said, nothing good's going to happen today, even though you did something good. Nothing good's going to happen this week. Nothing good's going to happen this year. I mean, it took me 3 years to write my first paper, sitting in a dark room, looking at angiograms frame by frame. So good things take time. Something worth doing takes time. And I think, the most important element for success is grit and persistence. If it's worth doing, it's going to take effort and time.
If you had a time machine, what advice would you give your past self before starting your career in cardiology?
I don't think I would do many things academically different. I guess I might ask to be born at a different time in some ways, but not in other ways. I mean, I have to say, being involved when all we had was aspirin and a beta blocker to start was just breathtaking to see everything that came after that. I mean, I was involved in all the beginning lytic trials with Timmy, all the trials of the oral thienopyridines like prasugrel and clopidogrel and ticagrelor, played roles in all those studies. All the 2B3 inhibitors led a lot of those trials. Statin trials, all the lipid lowering. It's just been just kind of like almost want to pinch myself watching how much things have changed since I began. When I began, the mortality was probably around 30% in the setting of a STEMI. Now it's down to about 6%, 1% for an inferior MI. And it's fun to watch how beta blockers, we use beta blockers now, we don't really need them. So it's good to start when I started, but the thing I wish had changed, if it had all been a few years later when we didn't have to be on call like every other night or every third night or whatever, where I could have been home more with my family. I think at this point, later in this time in medicine, there's a little better work-life balance. So I guess I wouldn't change things, just maybe when I did them.
As you just stated, achieving equilibrium between professional responsibilities and personal well-being is a lifetime challenge. What strategies have proven effective for you in maintaining a harmonious work-life balance?
Well, here you're getting a sense of it right now. Can you hear my dog crying? You can hear her crying. Can I just open the door and get her? Because that would illustrate that I've got to do.
Perfect.
1 second. Hold on. Let me get her. Come here, honey. Okay. Come here. All right. Well, here's Piper, my dog, and she was crying. So the point of this work-life balance is to pay attention to the other people in your life. She knows when I'm on these calls and she likes to get on them. So pay attention to your family. I wish I had done a better job of that. My own kids are really good at it. My 2 sons, one of them just is getting done taking paternity leave and they're deeply engaged with their children. I'm glad they have more time than I did. I was making $26,000 a year. It had to moonlight 11 extra nights a month to make it, getting paid $27 an hour, and it took a toll on a family. So I'm lucky enough now later in my life to have more free time, and I like to spend that time with my grandkids now, but also painting. I struggle, we all struggle, different times work demands more of you, at least mine does, and other times it's a little easier. It is a problem when several things come at once, when you have several big projects all happening at the same time, and then you're working 18 hours a day, and there's really no balance. But my goal is to have more balance. I do the best I can, but there's sometimes you just gotta buckle down.
Shifting our focus to a critical issue in the medical field, I'd like to address the topic of gender disparities. Given your extensive experience, could you share your insights on the challenges and potential solutions surrounding gender disparities within the medical profession?
Yeah, it's been a big issue. I I think I've worked very hard with people like Roxanne and Marin. I was the first man in Women as One. I did their logo for the organization, spoke recently for them, and did artwork for their book. I'm fully supportive. I think we have come a long way. I'd like to congratulate them. I think we now have women in many, many more leadership positions. I think you rarely see a mantle these days with all men. So I think we're making sure that women are equally represented. I think in cardiology, we have challenges because, only 5% of interventional cardiologists are women. So, there aren't a lot of them to be on all those panels, but we're doing all that we can to make sure women are well represented. I think the other challenge now is compensation and making sure that we have equal pay for equal jobs. And I think it's going to take a little bit more time, but I think we're getting there as well.
You are a beacon of critical thinking. How do you actively cultivate and apply this skill in your daily professional endeavors?
I think the easiest person to fool is yourself. I think you got to have a real honest conversation with yourself and keep yourself in check. We all have our biases, and it takes a lot of intellectual honesty to say, hold on, is that really true? Check your assumptions. Go back to the primary literature. One thing I also find is really lacking these days is people going back to the original literature. Sadly, so many people are practicing medicine based on what they see on Twitter. Um, that's good for breadth, but it's not good for depth. And if there's a really critical topic, go look at that article. And most importantly, go look at the methods in the article to make sure that what they're saying is well founded. So be critical of yourself, go beyond social media, check it out yourself, and be a skeptic first and foremost.
Now, leadership. In your opinion, what singular trait stands out as indispensable for effective medical leadership?
The singular trait is that there is no singular trait. I think the singular trait is to not be singular. I think different tasks or different settings require different leadership skills. So 7 years ago, I was asked to take over what you see up there, the BAME Institute. It was bankrupt, owed sponsors a few $1 million, and I was asked to come salvage it. That is a very different skill set than where it is now. At that time, it was command and control. I had to let half the organization go and take over. It wasn't time for consensus building. Now, 7 years later, we are very financially healthy. In fact, we have enough money to create endowments for different professors. So it's a different time. Now, I tend to lead much more by consensus. So in between, there's all different types of leadership styles. So I think you have to have a Swiss Army knife of different styles to match the task. And that's what the best leader does.
To our young colleagues tuning in, would you offer practical advice and insights to boost their career progression in the field of medicine?
I would say, as I said before, persistence, grit, never giving up. What I always tell my team on our calls, I end it with no today just means yes is coming tomorrow. So they get so upset when, this doesn't go their way, that doesn't go their way. I just say that was today. You're not gonna give up. You just keep going at it and eventually it'll turn. And, then we get on the call and people say, see, you were right. I got the opportunity to lead this big trial. They said no for a year or two, but now I'm going to do it. So hang in there. Don't ever, ever, ever give up hope. The saddest thing in the world is to see someone losing faith or hope. Surround yourself with people who are not anchors, but are sails who help you hold on to that hope. Do what you love and do it with the people you love. I think that's probably the best recipe for success I found. I do derive tremendous enjoyment from all the people I work with, and not afraid to tell them that, and really love what we're doing. Network. It's so important to form groups of allies and people. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with a team. Cultivate that team throughout your life. My kids often ask me, am I charging enough for my services? Or I'm like, no, you're not, you shouldn't even be trying to make money when you're 20 to 30. You should be building friends, making friends, and building relationships. That's very important in the early part of your life. Say yes to nearly everything when you're young, but halfway through your career, say no to most things. I say no to most things now, except your podcast for today, because I do think talking to young people is important.
Crystal ball time. Where's cardiology headed in the next decade?
Cardiology. I think it is heading more and more to prevention. I think the obesity drugs are going to fundamentally change things. I don't think right now they will because the price is too expensive, but someday when the prices come down, I think they'll be very, very widely used. I think at least in America, we need to reevaluate our relationship with food. How can it be we have problems with obesity in a big chunk of our population and with people going hungry in another side of our relationship, part of the country? So we got to get that figured out. I think our portions are too big. I think rather than primary prevention, we need to go all the way back to primordial prevention in childhood and really establish healthy habits in childhood. I do think we will see a focus more and more on small inhibitory RNA approaches to treat a lot of diseases. So much exciting work going on there in the amyloid space, the lipid space. Everywhere you look, you're seeing small inhibitory RNAs take over. The genetic treatment does hold promise. I think, we'll see if it holds up, genetically modifying a target like LDL for someone's whole life. Is that a good idea? Maybe it is for a homozygous patient. So I think more and more you're going to see a shift towards, there she goes, a shift towards earlier treatment. We talk about not just lower LDL, but lower LDL longer. And we talk about cholesterol years now. You get above 4,000 when you multiply your LDL times your age. You're starting to see clinical atherosclerosis. So earlier starts at prevention, getting rid of risk factors. I think obesity, get your weight down, and I did, gets down your blood pressure, your LDL, your CRP, everything. And, these drugs will also maybe help you stop smoking. So obesity is a multi-risk factor intervention, which I think is going to be increasingly important.
And because we love a good read, as we wrap up, Dr. Gibson, please share with our audience a book that has profoundly influenced you and that you recommend.
Well, there's two books, depending on what you want to do. If you want to look forward, and I'm always looking to where the puck's going to be, read 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Harari. Very good read, very forward-looking about how everything is changing. If you are a leader like me, and if you aspire to have a leadership position, the single most important book you can read, and read it again, and read it again, and read it again, is The 48 Laws of Power. Cynical read, but sadly, everything you really, really need to know is in there. And as you go through life, you'll look at it and you'll go, wow, that was right. Sadly, cynically, a lot of the things in that book were true. It's how you deal with other people and not necessarily exert power, but keep people from exerting power over you, and seeing how they're doing it is critically important.
As we bring this episode to a close, I want to extend our sincerest gratitude to Dr. Michael Gibson for graciously sharing his insights and expertise with us today. This was absolutely fantastic. For our audience, thank you for tuning in. Stay connected to the Medical Portfolio app and podcast for updates, and please do provide your feedback, is really important for us. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for having me.